Not to put you on the spot, Conica. No, just kidding.
Oh, of course.
Of course. I just wanted to know a little bit more about your mental wellness journey and, how it was before and during COVID-19. And then I know that you're very powerful with your art. I wanted to ask a little bit more about how you've used music and art on your journey, and kind of start your conversation from there.
Yeah, so um, before COVID, mental wellness for me was, oh gosh, it was more about trying to like disprove that there was more physical causes. Like, because I had recently, only in the last 4 years, received the diagnosis of PCOS. And once I dove into like understanding that a bit more, I started to recognize that there were cycles to my ups and downs that really heavily related to my hormones. So
Talk.
before, it was a lot of doctor's appointments and trying medications and birth controls and anything that the doctors would throw at me, I had to give it a fair shot. And it was, like I said, I got that diagnosis at 23 and I'm 27 now. So like 4 years of being influenced by medications. Oh, it was a lot, and it's still a lot because it's like, it's disappointing. A lot of people say like you can just take this medication and it'll help you get through it. But every single one I took just made it worse and worse and worse until I started looking into like my nutritional deficiencies and like, when you have things like PCOS, it affects your endocrine system and that impacts your insulin levels, which can cause diabetes and all of these other invisible illnesses that we don't really know we have, or we might be like on the way to having, because it's like a loop. Once we start feeling down, we start taking care of ourselves less. So, sorry, it can be really difficult to tell when our brains are struggling because we're eating or sleeping less, or if we're eating or sleeping less because our brains are struggling. So, like, having a diagnosis and going to doctors and, just continuing to push through all of those difficulties and the trials of, trying to find something that's physically contributing to the mental struggles, it helps a lot. It just gives us a way to learn to recognize, like, if it is something else that's causing these mental health fluctuations, and where we might be able to begin correcting deficiencies to like really bring out the best in us and give our body a fighting chance to like really function at its peak. 'Cause, yeah, it's the least we can do to just like, even if it's stubbornly, feed ourselves, take a vitamin, drink some water, like just sit outside in the sunlight. You don't have to necessarily walk anywhere, but like all of those little things impact our body and our mental health in big ways. So, yeah, that was the majority of before COVID. And then once COVID hit, it was, it went from like my personal health to more like my family's wellness as well. Because suddenly, we're spending so much time together under the same roof. They're not going to school. But like, I need to be their source of education, entertainment. And because, I'm not working like a 9 to 5 or any job where I'm out of the home, I'm home constantly. And that's another weight on top of, you know, everything else that we deal with on a personal level. It suddenly was in our faces as a family.
For
And
real.
it got real. It got really real, really fast.
Mhm.
So that shift from personal focus to family focus, it, it was a lot. And part of what helped me get through that was music. Because, like, even though I can't necessarily, well, couldn't when quarantine hit, get together face to face with all my, like, my networking buddies from music and from the scene where we just kind of like, you know, we're activists. We get together, we talk about these problems, and we can help pick each other back up. But with just music, there's the ability to email and video chat and like transfer files and just talk about what we want to do, and the feeling in the lyrics or the instrumentals that are chosen. That sense of community that's projected transcends quarantine and social distance. Like a good song is like a welcome hug to a lonely brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really helps a lot to have music and have that outlet, because that's where I'm able to be vulnerable and not be so shaky. I'm able to be vulnerable and confident in my vulnerability. And it's therapeutic to get that out there. And especially when people give you the feedback, like you spoke to something in their soul and just like validated and helped them get through, you know, something that you struggled with for a really long time. It's important. So yeah, we've been sharing that with our kids. It's one of the best ways that we've learned to bond is like through practicing music and having them record with us, and you know, asking them what they're interested in, or just to smash some keys on a piano for a bit and see what they can come up with. It's great. It helps with the other tools that we need to apply that we've learned from doctors and experience, like emotional regulation and communication skills, problem solving, not only like on paper, but like when we have conflicts, or when we have conflicts like in ourselves, not just with other people in the world. These things are easily spoken about around the focus of music with my family. So a lot of those like big emotions that we as adults are kind of conditioned to be afraid to have, we're really emphasizing the importance of accepting those and not fearing those to our kids. Because you know, before quarantine, it's something that we think about as parents and as influencers or aunties, grandmothers, you know, as anybody who might be looked up to. We're worried about our impact on who's looking up to us at some point. And with quarantine and with COVID-19, it suddenly was like very real. It was very in focus, and we decided to make that more conscious effort to apply what we learned from our experiences and from all of our self-help research from our friends and social circles to our family dynamic, more than just like our individual function. And that helps, because when we're practicing that with our family, we're practicing that with ourselves, practicing kinder dialogue with the ones we love, and we're practicing how to talk that way with ourselves, right? So ultimately, like, we're all learning how to slow down, accept ourselves, find and enjoy new little things, try healthier foods, you know, try drinking water more often or instead of coffee.
Coffee, Conika.
And just taking vitamins, being grateful, being mindful, to neglect our bodies so that we actually do have the best chance to support our mental wellness, like physically. Preventing, you know, recognizable deficiencies ultimately helps us to prevent spiraling into the depths when those low moods and when those bad days really hit us. And that's like, not to say it's 100% our fault, just to give us some control back of those tiny things, because, you know, a lot of the times when we reach out, those supports in the community are lacking. And
Right.
that is another big part of prevention, is having more of a sense of belonging in community, or a sense that even when we don't belong, we might be able to trust someone we don't know to help guide us back to finding where we do belong. So like, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say on the topic. Is our nutrition is important. Applying these help tools with our family and with the people that we're close to right now really helps. It's just practice and practice and practice, because when we do get down on ourselves, that low mood we get into, we practice that too. We practice all of those negative phrases and really drill that into ourselves. So we gotta unlearn those things by practicing the more positive.
I really liked that you had kind of touched on the supports in the community and how sometimes they can't be there either. And that's something that I think about a lot too, is that oftentimes, you like the supports in the community, like they're there, but they're also not to be taken advantage of. They're there just as much as you are there for them too, right? I mean, it's a back and forth. It's kind of like a larger family almost. So
yeah, it's almost like we just need more supports that require like lower levels of like to qualify. Like we can't need to be in crisis before there's some sort of intervention. Like if we have the ability to recognize that we're slipping, someone's got to be able or available to prevent us from getting right down in the depths before we have to be dug back up.
I feel that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's community, like more sometimes now. Like as I go on my journey, I'm realizing like institutional help, like organizations, nonprofits, they're amazing, and there's amazing people working there with the hugest hearts. But sometimes there's these boxes that need to be checked and these barriers, right? So when I'm doing this kind of work in my community, I notice that when you're working with grandmothers or with family members or with your circle of girlfriends or boyfriends, right, or people friends, where you have that that person is going to be there, or if you need to call upon them, that you can, right, or that you have a multitude of people. And I find that when my community circles are becoming more of my sense of care than my institutional circles. And, I see room for needing to build that and to invest in that and invest in, our grassroots and the people who are doing that work.
Yeah, it exists. Like you said, there are those places where people are dedicated and they work really hard, but they're small and they can't take on the workload that exists right now. We need to really, put those guys in the spotlight and kind of use them to lead the way, set an example for how bigger, health organizations need to kind of apply to help this problem. Nip it in the bud. Don't wait until it's a crisis.
Before I put any next brave panelist on the spot, was there any other feedback? I can see everybody kind of moving in their chairs. So is there other thoughts around Conika's reflection?
Well, I would like to say I'm thankful for listening to you speak, because you hit a lot of points that I feel very passionately about, especially being a mom at home, not working right now, like lack of resources. Cece said community, all of it hits home on the dot.